Hello, and welcome to Totally Schway, a podcast about
the DC animated universe.
You're so enthusiastic this morning.
That was my enthusiastic voice.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great day, a great week, a great month. How the hell are you? Like, tell me down in the comments, how are you? I genuinely want to know. So let's. Do you have any news today, Luke?
So one little thing I'd like to give a plug to is that if you are listening to this and you live in the United States of America, in November on the 3rd and the 4th, I believe. I should probably bring up the details.
The thing in Macon, Georgia?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Nice.
So if you are in the United States of America, there is a wonderful event being put on in Macon, Georgia, at the Amstar Cinema, called Behind the Mask, A Night of Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So there will be screenings of the film on Friday, the 3rd of November, and Saturday, the 4th of November. And in attendance will be friends of the show, Dan Reba, Brad Rader, Kevin Altieri, and Alan Burnett.
Ooh, hello.
There is a VIP package that costs, I believe it's $100, where you can meet the creative team behind the film, and you also get a t-shirt with a Phantasm design by Kevin Altieri on it.
Oh my God, can we buy those shirts?
I wish we could, but they're just for people that attend the show. And I really wish I could go. But he's
got work. Adult things.
Well, I've got work, and I also don't have the money for it because, if you can't tell from my voice, I'm in the UK, and that's actually quite a long way from Macon, Georgia. I did look into flights and how much it would cost. Unfortunately, I don't have the funds for it because I splurged on some animation cells earlier this year. It was practically the same cost as the flights and the hotel, and I'm really kicking myself for not having the foresight to put some money aside. But, if you are nearby, I really recommend going. It looks like it's going to be a great show. If you've listened to the Mask of the Phantasm commentary track I recorded with Dan, Kevin, and Brad, then that's a little preview of some of the anecdotes that they will share about the making of the film. And you'll also get Alan Burnett there, who, he's the guy that basically came up with the story for the film, and he assigned it to his writers, and he edited it. So Alan Burnett's like the guy that saved Batman the Animated Series, if you didn't already know. So he's held high in my esteem. Sorry, Mary.
And we love him.
We don't really know Alan, so we can't necessarily say that we love him.
We like him.
Yes, we like Alan Burnett and his contributions. They're great.
By the way, I had no idea. What animation cells have you bought this go round?
This year, there was a Joker's Favour, a Feet of Clay, a Superman Nighttime, and there was a Growing Pains layout.
Have you received them?
Yes. Oh, I received them ages ago because I bought them earlier this year.
See, this is the type of wife I am. I don't. It's not that I don't care. It's that but if Luke buys something and it's kind of expensive, although I don't. Expensive is a term I'm not. Your happiness isn't expensive. Your happiness should be whatever you want it to be. But if it makes Luke happy, I don't care. It's not as long as it's not hurting anybody.
Just hurts my bank balance.
Well, that's whatever.
Yeah, right. Money's made to be spent.
Yeah, exactly. And you can always make more of it as long as you're able-bodied and all of that. So get a wife like me. That. Just actually no, don't. Moving on.
Yeah, so that was it for announcements and news and stuff. Gilgamesh is doing some quality control at the moment, messing around with cables and.
You know what? We're just gonna let him do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you'll have heard that, but he just let out a little meow as he likes to do. I might leave this in when we edit.
No, we will leave it in.
Actually, Mary, maybe you'll edit this episode.
Maybe. So let's actually get on to the episode.
Yeah. So, Mary, what is this week's topic?
So this is a kids show?
To elaborate on that, the topic we're discussing here is how subversive the DC animated universe shows could be. So what we mean by that is, I guess, how subversive the show could be. So yes, it was a cartoon made for children, an action-adventure cartoon, or they were action-adventure cartoons made for children. But they pushed boundaries, and they would subtly reference things that maybe other kids' shows didn't talk about. And there were some episodes of particularly Batman and Batman Beyond that were quite intense and frightening.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons I wrote this down, because this is one of my my suggestions that I've written down, and I know you've talked about it, I think, in depth before, is the way that the DCAU dealt with mental health issues without being so, like, they didn't, like, in some of the episodes it was dealing with, for instance, Two-Face. That in itself, you can say that Two-Face has multiple mental health issues and all of that, but the episode wasn't titled Harvey Dent Crazy or Harvey Dent
Head case.
It was Two-Face. Forgive me so much for forgetting the name of the episode. It was Two-Face, and then Two-Face Part 2.
Yeah, Two-Face Part 1, Two-Face Part 2.
So you had that. And when you watched it, you didn't go into it thinking, oh, I'm going to learn some things about this person's mental health. You didn't. You went in thinking, oh, I'm going to see all this bad guy stuff. But actually, even as a kid, you kind of have sympathy for him because of his mental health problems that are obvious from the moment you actually meet, the character of Two-Face. So I appreciate that they didn't just, shove it down your throat like the old school. Well, I don't know if you guys remember in the 90s, the after school specials and the commercials that were all about, this is how you can be a happier person. Kids rule. Stuff like that. It wasn't like that. It was, and it wasn't necessarily just an adult thing. It was just a human thing. Like, it was just how you would, obviously not the, well, hopefully not the whole, supervillain type of things, but it's the stuff that you would see from someone that had, a mental health issue.
Yes, and it's funny how with Batman, the original story editor was a woman named Catherine Derrick, and she went on to, or she might have previously worked on Captain Planet and the Smurfs, which were very different. They were kind of those public service announcements, stranger danger, recycle your bottles, and that was something they really wanted to avoid with Batman. Now, she wanted to include some of that, and you would see it in the odd episode, like, I think it's the Underdwellers, where there's those two kids at the start essentially surfing on a tram, and one of them gets their foot caught as they're approaching a tunnel. And like, oh no, and Batman swoops in and he says, if you play chicken, you fry,
Yeah.
And that was kind of cringy, and that was the kind of thing they wanted to avoid. But they still had little morality tale episodes that delivered messages. It's just that it was a bit more subtle and a bit more mature. Yeah. And I think that's the thing about these shows, is that they didn't talk down to children. That encouraged, that elicited a positive response from kids. I know it did to me, because when I was watching it, I was like, they don't think I'm an idiot. They're talking to me about a mature topic.
Yes, that's exactly how I felt. Because I didn't care for a lot of children's TV shows when I was a kid. It's just not something that I've ever really liked. I'm not that type. That's one of the reasons, although Animaniacs is great, it wasn't really something that I would watch all of the time. Like, if it was on, I didn't have to watch it, because it was a bit more it was happier in a way. But yeah, And Captain Planet and the Smurfs, I've never been a fan of the Smurfs. I need to preface this by saying that I have something called, I believe it's called puppophobia. I have a fear of puppets, like a genuine fear. And when I was younger, there were these, just at the fair. So when I was younger, at the fair, they had these Smurf puppets. And I can only think of that nowadays when I see Smurfs. But anyways, that's beside the point. But Smurfs and Captain Planet were not really, or something like the Magic School Bus. It really wasn't my cup of tea because, yes, I understood the message behind it, but those were things I was already being taught by watching the news or watching the school news and stuff like that. And I think a lot of grown-ups, especially around that time, thought that kids were kind of stupid.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people already know right from wrong. They know not to throw litter on the street when they're finished with it. They know how to, you know, put it in the garbage can and all of that. And, you know, we also know not to, you know, cause more harm to this world than we should or than we already do. And, you know, kids aren't that stupid.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you've gone down this path with the conversation, because I was thinking, when you brought this up, I was thinking, oh, think about all the horrible things they did that you'd never see in any other cartoons. But really, what the angle you're coming from is that it's not necessarily that it was horrible, it's that it was more mature.
Yeah, and it's not, just like you just said, it's not that, you know, Batman lost his parents, or sorry, I'm going to say this because I don't like saying Batman lost his parents, because Bruce lost his parents at a very young age and, you know, saw it happen and this and that. That's one part of this, why I say, oh, that's a kid's show. But another part of it is, it's just not demeaning and patronizing like some of the other kids' TV shows, especially at the time in the early 90s. I just feel that, you know, things like Power Rangers, there was always, it always ended on a good note. Well, yes, bar the few cliffhangers, but it always ended on a good note. Like there wasn't this sense of, there was always a sense of good and evil. But with, I think, how the DC animated universe did it is, yes, there's good and evil, but there's also an in-between. And I think that's very realistic. And to be realistic in a kids show at the time just was kind of unheard of. Really. I hope I'm making sense here.
No, you're making perfect sense.
That's the great thing that, especially Batman the Animated Series, taught me when I was a kid, was that it's not just black and white. You have that gray area, and sometimes you're not good or bad. You're just very in between. You don't have to have this sense of I'm doing the right thing or I'm doing the wrong thing. You could just be living. And I think for a while there, I thought I was kind of like the gray person because I wasn't a superhero or I wasn't a villain or something. But, you know, it doesn't matter what you are, but we just know that it's just not black and white. And Batman Animated Series definitely taught me that.
Yes, yeah, and I think the key to a good villain is you need to relate to them and understand them.
Yes.
Otherwise, they're just like this cartoonish. I always think of this meme of a Spider-Man panel from a comic, and it's a wonderful image. I love it so much. So it's Spider-Man talking to Sauron, or Sauron. Sauron? Yeah, Sauron. Sorry, Sauron's Lord of the Rings. Yeah. Sauron is the pterodactyl mutant from X-Men, and Spider-Man saying to him, "But with your amazing scientific genius, you could cure cancer." And Sauron goes, "But I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs." I love that. I think it's really good. But at the same time, it's kind of like a shallow motivation. There's a reason why Sauron isn't, the top of the list of anybody's favourite villains. But people will talk about, say, well, me, I talk about Two-Face a lot. Clayface and Harley Quinn and the ventriloquist and Scarface.
Yeah.
All these people that are damaged or somehow wronged, lashing out at the world. I think that makes them much more compelling villains when you can see why they're doing what they're doing. It's just what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah, you see that they've been hurt, and in some form or fashion they've been hurt, and it doesn't just come out of nowhere. But then again, sometimes it does. Let's just be real here. Sometimes evil does come out of nowhere, but again, the realism in these animated shows was fantastic by not just having every single villain like that. Like every single villain just being like, I hate the world.
Of course, there were villains like that across the series. Like, well, let's just say like Darkseid, for instance. Now, Darkseid doesn't really have any grand motivations. He's not shaped by tragedy or anything like that. He's just a despot. He's like, I want the anti-life equation. I want to bring control to the universe. I want everyone to do what I say. And that's it. And that's fine.
It's one of my least favorite characters.
Oh, really? Is it just because of the emotional depth, or just...
No, it's, the emotional depth, and I just don't like the storyline. Like, it's not... Like, with Harley Quinn and with the Joker, you have, like, complete brilliant storylines, whether you're reading the comics or you're watching the TV show or you're watching the movies. You have that, well, I guess it is a depth of character that is, it's far better than Darkseid. And I just really don't like Darkseid.
I mean, I like Darkseid. I like his character design, and oh god, what's his name? Michael Ironside. Michael Ironside plays Darkseid. Is that his name? I'm gonna have to. No, I'm sorry if I got that wrong. I'm not going to Google it because it's disruptive. But I thought he was a great voice for Darkseid as well. And one of my favourite things, actually, it's a very malicious act in Superman, is after during the episode, I think it's called Apocalypse Now, when Darkseid brainwashes Superman and helps him, or has Superman help him invade Earth. Superman brings in the New Gods for help, and the New Gods tell Darkseid, hey, if you continue this invasion, you're violating our treaty and we'll be at war. So Darkseid has to go home with his tail between his legs. But as a malicious, spiteful act, he uses his Omega beams on Officer Dan Turpin, who kind of makes some sort of quippy remark like, yeah, get out of here, you bum. Not because Turpin has upset him or hurt his feelings, but because he knows that by murdering Turpin, he will hurt Superman. And that's all he needed to do. Just one spiteful little act. And it's funny to note that Darkseid's Omega beams usually transport people somewhere. And they apparently, when the censors questioned whether Dan Turpin was dead or alive, the creative team said, oh yeah, well, later on we're going to show him as a slave on Apocalypse, showing that no, he's not dead, he's just been transported to Apocalypse. But they never did it, and canonically Dan Turpin is dead.
My favorite characters is Amazo. I'm not going to say one of my favorite villains is Amazo, because in my opinion, Amazo wasn't created as a villain. And Amazo did bad things, but there was a reason Amazo did those things, because Lex disappointed the hell out of him.
And he lied to him.
Yeah, and the treatment of this character by the writers and creators was just brilliant. It was this thing where you didn't go in thinking that this character was just a bad guy. And then you had the story of Amazo. And in the end, I think, well, yeah, this is just my opinion, but I think that by the end of Amazo's storyline, I felt good about the character. And in a normal kid show, you wouldn't. You'd be like, that character needs to be in jail and it needs to, do this, this, and this. But no, like that character, again, did bad things, but did not deserve to have the complete blame for that.
Yeah, and just as an aside, I am so glad that they didn't stick with the original comic book design of Amazo, because Amazo is like this elf-looking guy in like green and black trousers with like a red pixie hat.
Don't make fun of elves.
Yeah, but as a super killing robot that can absorb superhuman powers, he looks just kind of preposterous.
Well,
and I like the
Yeah.
lump. The DCAU Amazo is just like a metallic lump.
Yeah, I love
with
it.
piercing eyes.
You get a reaction from it that's not just, oh, this is coloring book.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. And then he eventually becomes golden, doesn't he? Because he absorbs so much power and information. Mm-hmm. And the thing I like about Amazo is he's very childlike, he's very naive, and he just takes people at their word, which is why he believes Lex.
Yeah.
Until he absorbs the Martian Manhunter's powers and then can read their minds and realizes he's being lied to. Mm-hmm. And the thing I really like about that episode, I think it was called Tabula Rasa, correct me if I'm wrong, is Amazo is kind of expressionless most of the time. Like, you don't get a lot of emoting out of him. But when he reads Lex's mind and his head cranes round and his eyes... There's just so much emotion in the shape of his eyes and his brow. You can see how hurt and angry he is.
Yeah, and I'm going to go as far to say this, is I think Amazo is one of my favorite cartoon characters of all time, because, it's great that you mentioned that moment. It is because that moment, I think a lot of us have had that moment in life. Where
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like... people that we once loved or people that we once trusted, we have that, that look in our eyes, and it was wonderful. And that's not the only reason they are one of my favorite characters, but that moment in any cartoon, just you feel it. I don't like to use this term, but you get the feels.
Yeah. I do use that term quite a lot, but usually ironically. But if anyone else is a fan of Amazo and hasn't read Justice League Infinity, which is a spin-off comic book from the Justice League cartoon, read that, because it's available as a collection. I think it was about 7 issues long. It is primarily a story about Amazo and his adventures at the edge of the universe. And no, I'm not going to spoil it. But basically,
don't spoil it, because I haven't read it.
If you're an Amazo fan, then go and read that. It's really good.
Do you think I could get that on my Kindle?
Yes, I mean, I've got it. It's on the DC Universe app as well, so I could just hand you my phone, or I could sign into it on your phone, and you could read it there.
Word.
Yeah, so I don't get paid by Warner Brothers to promote the DC Universe app. I wish they would pay me. But
Warner Brothers, if you would like to reach out to Mary Susan Mears on Instagram, I could help you out with Luke's availability. So let's talk about the shows being inappropriate for children.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think they were inappropriate.
Yeah.
But some parents, not mine, would be like, you know what? Let's not watch this. Let's watch something else.
Yeah, so they kind of pushed boundaries a bit, didn't they, in terms of suitable content for children. There was a lot of involvement of broadcast standards and practices. Anyway, basically the TV censors.
I know. Censorship is wrong sometimes.
Yeah, thanks, Gilgamesh. So there were times where the intentions of the censors kind of backfired.
Yeah.
So, for instance, in the episode Off Balance, there's the episode opens with a guy named Twitch meeting Batman on top of, I think it's called the Statue of Freedom. It's basically Gotham's Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
And the League of Shadows turns up, and the League of Shadows are the cartoon version of the League of Assassins, because you can't say assassins in a kids show.
Oh no, God no.
But anyway, they turn up and they throw Twitch off of the statue and throw him into the ocean. Presumably he's dead because he's never seen again.
Yeah.
Now I nearly said assassins then. The League of Shadows members, when confronted by Batman, release a gas from their mask.
Yep.
Effectively committing suicide. However, the TV censors insisted that Batman take off their masks so you could see that their eyes were open and you could argue that they were still alive. What actually happened is Batman takes the mask off and you see these wide open eyes with pinpoint pupils. It's way more horrific than if they were just laying there in their masks.
It's a striking image.
It is, and I imagine it's probably been burnt into the brains of children across the and he said centuries then. It's not been that long. Across the decades. Feels like it sometimes.
You watch your mouth. I'm not going to say how old I am, but I'm not that old.
Yeah. But there are loads of examples of that. I mean, just let's say, for instance, I'm trying to think of another good example. So they often used silhouette to hide like
beautiful
nasty things happening, often like injections or stabbings or stuff, like in Mask of the Phantasm when the Joker grabs Arthur Reeves and like lays him down on his desk and you can see he jabs him with something. Not sure if he stabs him with a knife or if he's injecting him with a syringe. It's not really clear, but you can see Reeves kind of struggling a little bit and the Joker's just laughing over the top of it. Now, I know that wasn't subject to broadcast standards because it was a cinematic release. Yeah, but it's the same language they use from the TV show, like with great example, Clayface's origin, where they pour the stuff down his throat. You only see it in silhouette form. Way more frightening than...
Very film noir.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's very stylish as well. But it's that style and that creativity has a more potentially devastating effect on children.
Well, yeah, because, the imagination is a very powerful thing, and especially with children.
Yeah.
They think of all of these things, and if you're anything like I was, and I'm assuming it's going to be like you, we always went to the worst possible thing that could happen. Like the worst possible thing that could happen. Like I see those eyes, those like beady eyes that are just like that. It reminded me when I first saw it of those those commercials in the 90s. I'm talking to the American people here, where they would talk about drugs and like this is what it's like on drugs, and they would show the eyes, like the dilation of the eyes. That reminded me of one of those Class A drugs, and the bad part of that. I hope that makes sense. But that's what that reminded me of. So I went to that rather than thinking, oh, they're going to be okay. They just need to go to the doctor.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Commissioner Gordon in the next scene says, oh, they've taken something that's wiped their minds. But in a way, that's worse than being dead.
Yeah, that's very One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where it is essentially, you're killing off portions of them. So why not just kill them? That's, you can't have it both ways. And that particular thing that Commissioner Gordon said, just always quite confusing, because you see this striking image and then they say that, but there was no life in that image. And there have been at times on the show where they've been knocked out or they have been erased, their mind has been erased. There's still a little bit of movement, or you see at another point in the show that the character is alive, but I don't believe you ever saw them again, did you?
No, you wouldn't usually. So
yeah, they were dead. And censorship is a pain in the ass on cartoons and on a lot of things, but I don't think death should be, I'm trying to think of a nice way to say it, but death shouldn't be something people shy away from, because it happens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, if you're a child and you go, you turn on the TV or even turn on YouTube, you're going to see that 24-hour news feed. And sometimes you click on it, sometimes you don't. But if you do click on it, you're going to see a hell of a lot worse in that news than you are ever going to see on any of the DCAU cartoons.
Very true.
This is just, I'm being honest here. And in the 90s and the early 2000s, I think it, like I think, as you've said before, it kind of bit them in the ass, because our millennial brains are just as, messed up as anyone's. And when we were children, there was so much going on that, again, like I said, I'm just going to say this again, is our brains went to the worst case scenario. Like, we saw a silhouette of somebody getting stabbed. We're like, oh, they're dead. Like, that's in the stomach. That's a stomach jab. That you can't get. I saw Saving Private Ryan. I mean, I think this was before Saving Private Ryan, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and it's funny. I think that this kind of, it's not like adult, but slightly more mature nature is one of the reasons why these shows have endured for so long. Famously, the networks wanted more kid-friendly shows, so that's kind of why they pitched the initial idea of teenage Batman instead of doing more Batman the Animated Series or Superman. But it's a testament to the creative team's work, how they managed to turn that potentially awful kid-friendly idea into Batman Beyond. And Batman Beyond, okay, the initial pitch was that it would be more kid-friendly and have like a kid protagonist. But oh my god, some of the worst stuff in the DCAU happened in that show. Tell me about it. Let's just briefly spend a second talking.
Splicers.
Yeah, I mean, splicers. Yeah, splicers are pretty grotesque, but the worst thing in there, in my opinion.
I wouldn't say they were grotesque. It was just, anyway.
Well, excuse me, Cuvier.
Yeah.
Dr. Cuvier,
Yeah.
he was particularly grotesque. Because he had multiple splicer jabs, didn't he?
Yes.
And he turned into this, like, I am a chimera, Batman. That guy.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, the most frightening episode would be Earthmover. So for that one, that's the girl who's being stalked by these like mud creatures, and they're kind of hanging around her house and watching her.
Yeah.
And so it transpires that her father had been involved in an accident years ago and been buried underground alive with toxic waste, and now he was just like this radioactive skeleton, rotted away, embedded in the ground, and he could control Earth to a certain extent. And just his voice, it was awful. I'm going to see if I can edit in a sample of this.
Go ahead. I've got a lot to answer for, but for God's sakes, let Jackie go.
She stays, and you die.
It's one of those things where it's, again, it's not, it's the black and white. You still have that gray there because, he's trying to look after his daughter and this and that. And, well, I mean, watch the episode.
Yeah, because
I'm not going to give a lot, like, too much away, but it's that, to me, there is, in some regard, there's some of that gray area.
To a certain extent, yeah, and I don't think there's a problem with talking about the content of the episode, because most of the people that listen to our show will have watched them all intimately. They'll have intimate knowledge of the shows. So,
spoiler alert if you haven't.
Yeah, so the thing I think is very interesting is that his daughter Jackie is living a luxurious lifestyle because she has been adopted by her father's business partner, who was indirectly responsible for the accident.
Yeah.
And her father blames this man and wants to kill him, thinking that he deliberately sabotaged him to steal his life and not share the money with him. Now, we see from the flashback that it was an accident, and the only thing wrong he did was he didn't report the accident because it would have ruined him financially, and he chose to bury it.
Yeah.
Because he thought, well, my friend's dead, reporting it is not going to bring him back.
Yeah.
I'll adopt his daughter and look after her for the rest of my life in penance.
Yeah.
Which, in a way, is kind of an admirable...
It's that grey area.
It's kind of an admirable thing to do, but at the same time, he's also pretty skeezy.
Yeah. So it's good and bad. So
Yeah.
there's that grey area I'm talking about.
But the father is obviously completely unhinged by this
Yeah.
point, and his plan is to make his daughter live underground with him,
Yeah.
which is no kind of life
No, it's
for
not.
anybody. You can understand his anger because he doesn't know the full situation. All he knows is that he was left underground
Yeah.
and he's now a monster.
Yeah.
But the final act he does before he's killed is he lets Batman and Jackie and this man escape. He helps them escape.
Yeah.
He uses the roots to clear the passage so that they can get away.
What do you mean? A villain helping them get away?
Yeah, but the thing that sticks with me is just the voice. It's got like lots of audio effects over the top of
Yeah.
it, so it sounds just demonic. But I think of his glowing eyes and Jackie. But Batman Beyond had a lot of villains that were like that. You know, if you think about I've forgotten his name, but he's the rat boy that lives in the sewer.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And he's been like luring women down there to try and have a nice life with him. And when
Yeah.
they reject him, he kills them. I often think of him as being like the DCAU version of Ratcatcher, who is, you remember Ratcatcher from Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
But he's another very dark villain. He seems kind of friendly and affable until Dana rejects him. And then he just switches on a dime. It's just,
Yeah.
it's rough.
It's gross.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think that's a good word for Batman Beyond in places. It's just gross.
Yeah,
Like
and-
ink. Oh, when ink forces herself down people's throats to... Ugh.
I don't like ink.
No, you don't.
No, I don't like live wire either.
No,
Sorry.
that's okay. You don't have to like them.
Yeah.
I quite like ink. I think she's got an interesting power set. There's lots of like body horror stuff in there. I was
Yeah.
always really grossed out by that episode where she had that sycophantic henchman who wanted to be like her, and she only gives him half the treatment. So he's just like this gloopy mass with a big
Yeah.
leaky eye. It was, gross.
I don't like ink, but the character I think is still a good character. It's just Livewire. I can never get behind that. I really, I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of our thoughts on whether we thought it was a kid show or not, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still probably more you could say. Like, there are some very mature topics in Justice League, like particularly the Cadmus arc is just a big conspiracy, and like the ethics of the Justice Lords and
Yeah, but the thing with the Cadmus arc, by the way, CCH Pounder, I want to meet her one day. I love her voice. I also love her as an actress as well. Like, just all around wonderful. But the Cadmus arc, it is one of the most disturbing things I've seen in a TV show, and that's in live action, animated, whatever, because of what her character did.
specifically.
Amanda Waller, is the fact that she took Batman's DNA and put it in a woman's womb. Batman's DNA in a woman, and this woman had Bruce's children, and yes.
And she didn't know. To be fair, Warren McGuinness didn't know. He is the one that had his balls chemically altered.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to say the R word, but it's not the R word in a sense, but it's just disgusting.
Yeah, I can
It
see
is.
that. I can see that.
and as for someone who watches a lot of Law and Order SVU, a lot, this is, it's weird, it's gross, it's disturbing, it's mature, it's, children were supposed to be watching this. This was supposed to be a kids show. But we're talking about a woman having another man's children, without knowing that it was this man's child. Mm-hmm. And this other man is getting chemically altered and giving this woman another man's child. See what I mean there? It's just so disturbing. I mean, it was really well done.
It's a ethical violation.
Yes, ethical violation.
Yeah.
Lush would not like this. This would be one of those things, Lush, boycott. I'm just saying. This is not a good ethics thing.
No. I mean, I guess in Amanda Waller's mind, they were just receptacles for producing the new Batman, and then she was going to kill them. And then when the Phantasm said, actually, do you know what? I don't think I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And the project was abandoned. They were just kind of left to live their lives.
Yeah. And that character, Amanda Waller, and I'm specifically talking about, what this podcast is about, the DCAU, one of the worst characters in this show. Not I mean, it's great, a great character, but one of the worst
people.
Yeah, one of the worst people. And it's not just this particular situation, although I think this is where it completely crossed into a line of she is a villain. Mm-hmm. But and I think a lot of people overlook that Amanda Waller as a villain because they just think she's, girl boss Amanda Waller doing the right thing. Well, no, she's not. No, she's not. Great character, terrible person.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of the villains are.
Yeah.
Great characters, terrible people. But there's an element where you can kind of understand where they're coming from. You just don't agree with it.
Okay, so I'd like to get to the questions again. This is actually our second time recording it because I seem to have messed up a chord or something.
I don't think it was your fault. I think it's just this equipment we're using. It sometimes decides it likes to crackle. I had to re-record half of my Talia Al Ghul video.
Oh no.
Voiceover this morning because of a similar issue. And I got no idea. Someone told me it was the cables, so I swapped out the cables, put in new ones. It's still doing it. Drives me crazy.
Let's get nuts.
Yeah.
I had to.
So let's kick things off. So to start things off, we've got, I'm not sure how to say this, SVR Lite, I think. Might be Silverlight.
Silverlight.
Let me know if I got it wrong. I did get it wrong.
I'm Oklahoman. I get everything wrong.
Silverlight. Okay.
Silverlight.
So, hello, Luke and Mary.
Hey.
There we go. Good. One comment down. Okay, next we had Zehanaut 10 and Zemox and RDP16 Rules talking about the Gotham of the Nolan films being a bit bland, apart from Batman Begins. Everything was bland in the Nolan films. Realism isn't always a good thing. Gotham shouldn't be shiny and chrome, and it was right up until Bane destroyed most of it. I like Christopher Nolan movies, I think, because I like Interstellar, Inception. Mm-hmm. And, I liked the Batman movies that he did, but they're on, I have to be completely honest, it's the 60s Batman, and then it's the Nolan Batman. In terms of, reverse order, or?
No, in terms of, reverse order. So, my least favorite ones, it's the 60s Batman. Mm-hmm. But actually, no, I think I like the 60s Batman more than the Nolan ones, because I love camp things, as you know. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I would say the Nolan movies would be the last ones because, it's just. I'm gonna say something controversial. I did not like Heath Ledger as the Joker. And it's nothing. He's a great actor. He was a great actor. But I just don't know why everybody loved it. It wasn't really. He's no Joaquin Phoenix, and he's definitely not Jack Nicholson. I just feel like. Oh, obviously he's not Mark Hamill either. But it just didn't give enough for me. It was just, I don't know.
No. Fair enough.
Yeah. And like you said, the character of Gotham just wasn't. It was New York City, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was New York City.
I think they filmed some of it in Chicago, which I think is how we got on the topic.
Yeah.
Of it. But yeah.
And it was just, I'm sure when you go to Chicago and go to New York City, because I want to go to both of those places, I'm sure they're absolutely beautiful. But when you're filming something like that, you don't really, you should be able to connect with the city more. And I don't think, again, in my opinion, I don't think Christopher Nolan did that with his Batman movies.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
We're all entitled to our opinions. No, I wasn't. Your opinion is perfectly valid.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are lots of people that feel similarly to you. Okay, so on to the next comment/question. So Captain Alces has returned. Hello, Captain Alces. He says, I had planned to jokingly respond to the SpongeBob thing with a silly meme, but it was a SpongeBob meme, so that seemed fruitless. Invader Zim was good. Dib had a big head. Gurr and the squirrel were friends. There was toast.
Yeah.
Humour is subjective, probably all entertainment is really, but looking at the details and understanding why certain shows, books, scenes, characters and tropes appeal in the ways they do is fascinating. Very often we learn something about the art we create or even ourselves. There is so much value in passing through the technical achievements and decisions made, and it's a big reason why I love this channel. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with us your love for a magnificent work of art and helping us to preserve the artistic process that make these favourites possible. Now I think I've prattled on enough.
Thank you, Luke. You really do make people happy. I would like to talk about Invader Zim for a minute, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
So I didn't watch Invader Zim until I think I was 18, and I watched it with my brother, and we watched the whole thing together, and I loved it. I want to say this. It's funny. You feel a little bit gross watching some things, but it's not like a disgusted gross. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh wow, give me more, but not too much. And the episode that got it, I believe it's the episode that got it banned, was when he was eating kids, like literally just like going ah.
Is that the episode Dark Harvest?
I think so.
I think it is too.
Yeah. When I first saw that, I had no idea that that's what, made the show stop. I just watched it, and to be honest with you, I was just like, that was one of the episodes where I was like, oh, I really like this, but meh. Because there are so many other things, and Gurr was so fun. Tacos. I love it. But yeah, Invader Zim, great show. Far superior than SpongeBob.
Fair enough. I've not watched SpongeBob, as I said before, and I have watched a few episodes of Invader Zim, but I like the creator. I want to say his name's Johnny Vasquez or Johan Vasquez. I'm probably getting that wrong. I apologise in advance for that. But he did a comic book called Johnny the Homicidal Maniac that was quite good, and they had a spin-off book called Squee, and I loved Squee. I thought it was so funny. It's about this perpetually anxious child who was constantly getting abducted by aliens. His parents never noticed, and he was just kind of wandering around with this like abstract sense of dread.
Oh, I need to read that.
Yeah, you should do as well. Yeah, on to the next comment/question from RDP16 Rules. Hello, Luke and Mary. Let's start with your question. Oh yeah, because we asked him a question, didn't we?
Yeah.
Personally, I kind of stopped following the NFL in the 90s. Watching football was kind of a way to hang out with my dad, and as he got busier, I found other things to watch than football. But when I did actively follow football, I had NFL Blitz on PlayStation back then, woohoo. I was a Cowboys fan. Still kind of am, but I don't remember the last time I sat and watched a game. I did get to see Troy Aikman at a training camp practice one year as a kid, back when that was something to brag about.
I'm incredibly jealous that you got to meet Troy Aikman, because I am an 80s, 90s kid myself, as I've probably mentioned. And I come from the big, it was almost like the second coming of NFL, where you had your Deion Sanders, your Troy Aikman, I believe not Tony Montana, what's his name?
Scarface.
No, the Miami Dolphins man, I can't remember his name. But you had him, and you also had John Elway, and my mom was really like a big fan of one of those guys, and oh my God, I had to hear about that like every time. I mean, I had to hear about that. I don't think a kid should have to hear about someone's butt, but hey. So that's really great. I would love to meet Troy Aikman and Deion Sanders one day, because I feel that, taking some of their personal views aside, I just think they're really brilliant people that took football very seriously, but they also took, teamwork and, just their own growth really seriously. And that's my TED Talk. But yeah, I'm so jealous.
So continuing with the comment.
Okay.
There's more. Onto the episode. I'm very surprised you two missed out on some awesome DC locations. Maybe holding out for a part 2.
Maybe.
Specifically, I'm thinking of Krypton, Apocalypse, Atlantis, the House of Mysteries, the Hall of Justice, or the Watchtower, as they serve the same function, and the Lair of the Legion of Doom. We also could have done a full conversation about the Batcave. On a side note, the discussion should rightly focus on what BTAS specifically got away with on the next podcast. I also want to see a shout out to Invader Zim in that episode. The Dark Harvest was originally a TV Y7 before being bumped up to a TV PG for disturbing images. It makes sense though, as the creator also made a comic called Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Yes, he did, and we were just talking about that. And now for my Totally Schway questions. What are your opinions on Damian Wayne as a character? I know that he was introduced in the Batman Beyond comics. I haven't read those yet. But do you think that Kevin Conroy, Batman, beat ass, would be able to handle a child like that?
No.
I think he would.
I have my thoughts on it. But I don't know. I just think having his own offspring is different than having like a Robin or like a Barbara and stuff like that. I just think it's kind of like if Luke had a little boy. Luke is a great guy, but when he doesn't get something, or when something doesn't go his way, it's a little bit hot-tempered. Not as hot as a lot of other people, but it's hot-tempered. I don't think he would be able to handle that in small kid form. Just like
probably not.
I don't think that B-Task Batman would.
Well, he'd have Alfred with him to help with that, I think. Just a note on the Damian Wayne appearing in the Batman Beyond comics. Now, those aren't the animated universe Batman Beyond comics. Those are the DC mainline continuity Batman Beyond comics. I know that's sounding like I'm being pedantic, but there is a distinction to make. I am being pedantic, aren't I?
Okay, I want to go back to this Alfred thing.
Oh, right, fine.
What if Alfred wanted to go? Like, what if he wanted to retire?
He would never retire. That's like saying if, one of our grandparents decided that they wanted to retire. Oh, God, they did. Yes, died.
They did.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Is that what you meant, if Alfred died?
I mean, I was trying to censor myself a little bit.
I
mean, it's different than having Ace, because Ace is kind of like self-trained dog.
True.
Whereas, it's different. Anyway.
So are we done with that question?
I think so.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question.
Mm-hmm.
Who should get an adaptation, live action or animated movie first? Plastic Man, Dead Man, Animal Man, or Detective Chimp? Detective Chimp. That is my choice.
Is there a reason that you would like Detective Chimp to have their own adaptation?
Plastic Man had a cartoon in the past, I'm certain of it. Dead Man was in Justice League Unlimited. And Animal Man hasn't had an adaptation as far as I'm aware. But I think there's more scope for mystery and humour with Detective Chimp.
All right. I love a chimp. As long as it's treated right, yeah.
Okay, let's answer that. So two more comments to get through. So locations probably worth mentioning as supporting areas. Themyscira, Wonder Woman, mildly important for Justice League as they fought Faust and took the door to the underworld there. The Fortress of Solitude, Superman, Mongol Forget Something, but more important for Estas. I wonder what you mean, Mongol Forget Something. Anyway, Oa, Jon Stewart, not really touched on a lot, but worth mentioning. The Tower of Fate for Hawkgirl, where all the misfits gathered.
It's one of my favorite episodes.
Mm-hmm. Nanda Parbat, Batman. So how many guards do you think are needed to guard one man? Evidently, they didn't have enough, because the Legion of Doom got through quite easily. Smallville for the Martian Manhunter. Only real location I could think of in reference to him. The Flash, big question mark.
What about Mars?
Well, Mars, there's not really anything there, is there?
No, but... Oh, poor Mars.
Yeah, poor Mars. In terms of the Flash, I'm not sure. Probably that burger bar where he chats up girls.
Yeah.
That's probably what I'd say.
Yeah.
Also, as a note, I mostly felt that with reference to Static Shock and Batman Beyond, the setting wasn't really as much of a character, but rather the tone of the locations. Batman Beyond obviously had its futuristic Neo-Gotham vibe, where everything was far more advanced, but Static Shock had a homely 90s city vibe to it, where Metropolis and Gotham were more based on the history of them. Neo-Gotham and Dakota seemed to be based on the present. I'm not sure how much that worked for Batman Beyond, but it worked great for Static Shock. Certain episodes involving Richie in particular stand out.
You know, around the time that those two were made, Static Shock and Batman Beyond, I think just in general, TV shows that weren't based off of a particular city or state or something, all kind of had that, like, oh, we live in like mid-America or we live in the city type of vibe. And that was really it. And it sucks because they didn't, BTAS did such a great job of creating Gotham as a character. And when you go to these two, it just gets kind of, well, I don't think Batman Beyond is boring. I don't think Gotham and Batman Beyond is boring. I think it lacks a lot, but it's just meh.
I think with some of the later shows, the backgrounds, this is going to sound silly, but they kind of faded into the background. You didn't notice them.
It's like manga, really. Like, sometimes in some manga where it's just like bubbles or something just to have something in the background.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean when
I
I
can
say
see
that?
that.
Like,
Yeah,
it's, and it just, it's sad because I think if a place like Dakota you could have made a great character out of that. Yeah. Just like they did with Gotham. But unfortunately they didn't for whatever reason. But like I was saying, my point was a lot of late 90s, early 2000s TV shows and movies and stuff were like mid-America or the city or London. Every American actress who thought she had a great accent was like, I'm going to London. That's not a good accent, Natalie Portman. I said it. Let's move on to the next question.
Okay. Mostly Joshin says, hope you can make it to Chicagoland sometime. Our Comic-Con is in April. Weather isn't the greatest at that time of year, though. We live in England. The weather is never good, apart from about 2 weeks in the summer.
Yeah.
Although in recent years, actually, it's been hot a lot of the time, but I would say that's not good weather. It's uncomfortably hot.
Nah. And we don't have proper air conditioning.
No.
I would love to go to Chicago. It is on one of my places to go in the States. I want to go to New York City. I want to go to Chicago. I want to go to Seattle. I really, really think that Chicago, if you're an American, you will know. I'm not sure about people in other countries, but Chicago has such a great history in terms of, a lot of some really great brands come from Chicago, and it's just supposed to be such a beautiful place. So yeah, I would love to do that. Unfortunately, I don't think we'd be able to do it next year. But you never know. I would love to go to a Comic-Con in the States, but I have, as you can probably tell from this episode, I was a little bit anxious in the morning, and when I get around a lot of people, it gets a lot worse. So it's something that I would have to prepare myself for.
That basically means we're going to Chicago.
Yeah. I mean, it's not too far away from where I grew up. I could tell people where I grew up because nobody lives there anymore. I grew up in Midwest City, Oklahoma, and it's just like central Oklahoma, and you can get, because of the airport that we're quite close to, you can pretty much get to anywhere.
Okay, so we're done with the questions.
Nice.
All that's left to say is what we're going to talk about next time. So next time is going to be our Halloween episode, because it will be releasing on, the 29th of October?
I don't know what day it is today, so I don't know why you're expecting me to know what our podcast is going to come out.
I'm just adding 2 weeks onto this one. So yeah.
It is 2 weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks, yeah. So we'll probably talk about... do you know what?
Spooky stuff.
We're going to end up talking about Earth Mover again, I
think.
Scarecrow. And Scarecrow, yeah, and... wonder, are there any scary episodes of Justice League? I suppose the closest one probably would have been Eclipsed, I think it was called. The one with Eclipso, with the Black Diamond, where they got possessed by the Snake Men.
Yeah.
And that...
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know if I hum the tune right, but it's kind of right in my head.
Yeah. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Actually, it's the start of the week, so have a great week. If there's any questions that you guys want to ask, you know where to go. All right. Love you. Bye.
Bye.